Good morning, everybody. It's your favorite aspiring revolutionary here, Wandering Author, reminding you that we are all the authors of our own lives. As always, my message remains the same: spend less, live more, earn your freedom with frugality. And today we are finishing up question number 12, starting with article number 7 from St. Thomas's Summa Theologica, which is on whether those who see the essence of God comprehend him. Now, opponents have said that those who see God's essence comprehend him. Paul the Apostle states in Philippians 3:12, "But I follow after, if I may by any means comprehend." And again in 1 Corinthians 9:26, "I so run, not as at an uncertainty, so he must have comprehended." And he further adds, "So run that you may comprehend." Augustine has also stated that it is comprehended which is so seen as a whole that nothing of it is hidden from the seer. If we see God in his essence, we see him whole, with not one part hidden because he is simple, as we have discussed earlier. Others argue when we say we see him whole, and not wholly, that wholly would refer to the mode of the viewer or to the mode of what is seen. They argue that in either case, all who see God's essence see him wholly and thus comprehend him. On the contrary, though, it was written in the book of Jeremiah 32:18-19, "O most mighty, great and powerful, the Lord of hosts is thy name, great in counsel and incomprehensible in thought, thus none may comprehend him." St. Thomas believes the created intellect is incapable of fully comprehending God, for as Augustine says, "For the mind is to attain God in some degree, is great beatitude." To prove this, we must consider that comprehension depends on perfectly knowing it. So if we only believe something because learned men tell us, we cannot be said to comprehend it. That's very simple. If somebody tells you a calculus problem and you know the answer to the calculus problem, but you don't understand the underlying mechanics of calculus, you can't be said to comprehend calculus. And in the same way, the created intellect is not capable of attaining the perfect mode of knowledge of the divine intellect. Thus, it cannot comprehend it fully. God is infinite and infinitely knowable. However, the created intellect may only comprehend him in proportion to how much it receives the light of glory, and this is finite. We call God incomprehensible not because we fail to see him, but because we fail to see him as perfectly as he can be seen. And question 12, article 8, whether those who see the essence of God see all in God. Opposing views differ on this topic, with some saying that those who see God's essence see all in him. Like Gregory said in his dialogues, "What do they not see who see him who sees all things? And since God sees all things, should not those who see him also see all things? When we look at a mirror, we see what it reflects, and all things possible are reflected by God. So it would seem that whoever sees him should see everything." In De Anima by Aristotle, or On the Soul, it was said that if you understand the greater, you can understand the least. If that is the case, all that God does is less than his essence. So if you understand that, you should understand all that he does. And finally, rational beings desire to know all things by their nature. So if they see God and do not know all things, they will not be satisfied. On the contrary, angels see God's essence without knowing all things. And Dionysius said, "The inferior angels are cleansed from ignorance by the superior angels. Future contingent things and secret thoughts belong solely to God and are hidden from the angels. So even those who see his essence do not know all things." St. Thomas's conception is that when the created intellect sees the divine essence, it does not see all that he does. We see things in God as they are in him, but others are seen as effects are in their cause's power. So according to Aquinas, all things are seen in God as an effect is seen in its cause. From this it follows that as we perceive a cause more perfectly, we see more of its effects. Highly intelligent people can take one basic principle and extrapolate to many different conclusions, like taking the concept of addition and realizing that you can add up all sorts of different numbers, 2 plus 2, 4 plus 4, 8 plus 8, and so on. while those with weaker intellects require separate explanations for each. Therefore, a refined intellect can know all a cause's effects, and even the reason for them, if it has a complete understanding of the cause. Since we have shown in the previous article that a complete comprehension of God is impossible, we cannot know all that he does. Question 12, Article 9. Whether what is seen in God by those who see the divine essence is seen through any similitude. It may seem that whoever sees his divine essence sees it by some similitude, or a model. Typically, knowers assimilate knowledge in the object known. In this way, the intellect in action becomes what is intelligible, and the senses in action becomes the sensible, insofar as the object's likeness informs it, similar to how the eye is informed by an object's color. The divine essence so anyone who sees the divine essence and understands becomes part of it, must be informed by their image. An additional objection begins with what is seen, which is kept in memory. However, when Paul saw God's essence in ecstasy, he could later remember the experience as remarked upon by Augustine. In 2 Corinthians 12:4, it says, I have heard secret words which it is not granted to man to utter. From this we can tell that Paul's memory retained some image of his experience, and we can know that while seeing God's essence, he comprehended it through some series of ideas or images. Which is an interesting topic. What did Paul see when he saw God? On the contrary, though, we see a mirror and its contents by the means of one likeness or similitude. Yet everything could be seen in God, like in an intelligible mirror. Thus, if we do not see God by his likeness, but rather by his essence, neither is what is seen in him seen by images or ideas. St. Thomas remarks that we do not see any likeness in God when we witness his essence. Instead, his essence unites to our intellect. We only know something if its likeness is in us, and this can occur in two ways. With things which are similar to each other, our cognition can assimilate it in two ways as well. One, the assimilation can occur by the object itself, when its likeness informs us, like the moment a wavelength of light hits our eye and tells us an object's color. Otherwise, an image resembling the object can inform us, like if we see a picture and not the real thing. When we learn of something this way, it is only knowledge of the object's likeness. As Aquinas says, for the knowledge of a man in himself differs from the knowledge of him in his image. So, what you experience as being yourself is different than what you see when you look at a mirror. So to know something by their likeness is to know them in themselves, while knowing by their images in God is to see them in him. These two knowledges differ. The knowledge attained by those who see the divine essence is not of the objects themselves, but of the divine essence alone, by which God himself is also seen. So, according to Aquinas here, we never can see God himself, only an image that he projects onto us, at least in this lifetime. And then question number 12, Article 10. Whether those who see the essence of God see all they see in it at the same time. Appearances may lead you to believe those who see his essence do not see everything in him at once, because as Aristotle commented, it may happen that many things are known, but only one is understood. Like you may know how to do a derivative in calculus, but not any of the other operations. However, when we see things in God, they are understood because he is seen by the intellect. So it would seem that whoever sees God does not see all in him at the same time. Additionally, Augustine said, God moves the spiritual creature according to time. Nevertheless, these creatures are angels who see him, and they experience the progression of time. On the contrary, though, it was written by Augustine, our thoughts will not be unstable, going to and fro, from one thing to another. But we shall see all we know at one glance. St. Thomas's response to this question starts with a simple statement. What is seen in the Word is not seen successively, but at the same time. He tells us that although we are unable to know many things at once, yet we may understand them through our ideas. Despite our intellect's temporal limitations, we can grasp many diverse things simultaneously. Think of all the shapes our body can take or move, yet we may only be in one position at a time. If many things are understood by one idea, we understand them at once, as the parts of a whole are understood successively. They are not understood at the same time when many things are known by separate individual ideas. As was shown previously, things seen in God are not seen singly, but rather by His one essence, so they are understood simultaneously. 12. Article 11. Whether anyone in this life can see the essence of God. Some believe that we may see the divine essence in this life, because Jacob said in the book of Genesis 32:30, I have seen God face to face, and they say seeing Him face to face is to see His essence. Like was written in 1 Corinthians 13:12, we see now in a glass and in a dark manner, but then face to face. Likewise, the Lord said to Moses, I speak to him mouth to mouth and plainly, and not by riddles and figures. Doth he see the Lord? In the book of Numbers 12:8. This appears to indicate Moses saw God in His essence. The way we know things and judge them is in itself known to us, yet we know everything in God, as stated by Augustine in his Confessions. He wrote, If we both see that what you say is true, and we both see that what I say is true, where, I ask, do we see this? Neither I in thee, nor thou in me, but both of us in the very incommutable truth itself above our minds. Augustine also said, we judge of all things according to the divine truth, and it is the duty of reason to judge of these corporeal things according to the incorporeal and eternal ideas, which, unless they were above the mind, could not be incommutable. So it seems like we can see God Himself in this life. Augustine's reasoning tells us that whatever is in the soul by its essence is seen by the intellectual vision. However, intellectual vision is not by similitudes or likenesses, but rather by essences. So since God is in our soul by His essence, it follows that He is seen by us in His essence. On the contrary, though, in the book of Exodus 32:20, it says, Man shall not see me and live. We can assume this means that as mortals, images of God may be seen in this life, or replications, or shadows, but not by the likeness itself of His own nature. St. Thomas's belief is that humans can only see God in His essence if we are removed from this life. Knowledge always follows the mode of the nature of the knower, and since we are corporeal beings, we may only know what is corporeal, or material in nature, and since our soul has a corporeal being during our life, it can only know what has a matter-based form. The divine essence is unknowable through the nature of material things, and we have already shown that knowledge of God by means of any created similitude or likeness is not the vision of His essence, it's just a mere shadow. Therefore man's soul cannot see God's essence in this lifetime. We can see this from how our soul responds when the soul is abstracted from corporeal things. It becomes better at receiving abstract, intelligible things. Whenever we are dreaming or deprived of bodily sensations, divine revelations and foresight of the future are more easily perceptible, according to Aquinas. During our mortal lives, it is impossible for the soul to be elevated to the supreme of intelligible objects or the divine essence. When Dionysius said that a man in the Scriptures can see God, he does so in the sense that certain figures are formed in the senses or imagination as a similitude representing a portion of the divine. When Jacob said he saw God face to face, he saw a figure that represented Him, and this can be referred to as a high mode of prophecy, as we will later see. Jacob can thus be said to be referring to an exalted state of intellectual contemplation, above the ordinary state. God can work miracles in corporeal and supernatural things. He could even raise the minds of those living in the flesh beyond their senses to a vision of His essence. This is what Augustine said happened to Moses and Paul during their times of ecstasy. We see and judge things in God because we only know them by participation in His light. The natural light of reason itself is a participation of the divine light, though limited in nature. Intellectual vision occurs of things which are in the soul by their essence. God is thus in the souls of the blessed, and He is not in our soul by presence, essence, or power. 12, Article 12. Whether God can be known in this life by natural reason. Opponents believe God cannot be known by natural reason in this life. Boethius wrote that reason does not grasp simple form. However, we have shown in question 3 that God is supremely simple form, so it would appear natural reason could not know him. They also say the soul only understands things via natural reason, through the use of imagination. However, they claim since God is incorporeal, having an imagination of him is impossible, so we must not be able to know him by natural reason. Furthermore, they say the knowledge of natural reason extends to both good and evil, insofar as they have a common nature, yet knowledge of God is exclusive to the good. As Augustine says, the weak eye of the human mind is not fixed on that excellent light unless purified by the justice of faith. On the contrary, though, in the book of Romans 1:19, it was written, "That which is known of God is manifest in them." St. Thomas responds by telling us that natural knowledge begins with our senses. Thus, knowledge of what is natural only goes as far as it can be informed by sensible objects. Our mind can only be led so far by the senses to see God's essence, as his sensible effects do not equal his power. And those sensible effects are simply the effects of God which can be perceived by our senses, like sight, sound, touch, and what are the other ones? Taste. We cannot know the full extent of God's power from sensible things alone, and we cannot see his essence. However, we can see the effects of God in sensible things, which lets us infer his existence. Aquinas mentions how we can know what belongs to him, since he is the first cause of all things. In this way, we can know he caused all creatures, yet they are not part of him, as he is not a part of what he causes. Reason may not be able to reach up enough to know what it is, but it can know whether it is. Question 12, Article 13. Whether by grace a higher knowledge of God can be obtained than by natural reason. Critics of this view claim a higher knowledge of God cannot be obtained by grace compared to what is obtainable through natural reason. Dionysius has said, "Whoever is more united to God in this life is united to him as to one entirely unknown." He even said the same of Moses, and he obtained a certain excellence by knowledge given through grace. However, for God to unite with us while we ignore what he is derives from natural reason. Thus God must not be known through grace more than reason. Additionally, divine knowledge obtained by natural reason must come through the use of our imagination. Yet this is the same for grace-given knowledge. Dionysius also wrote, "It is impossible for the divine ray to shine upon us except as screened round about by the many-colored sacred veils." Moreover, the intellect adheres to God by grace of faith, yet knowledge appears to differ from faith. Gregory told us that things not seen are the objects of faith, and not of knowledge. On the contrary, the Apostle Paul wrote in the first book of Corinthians 2:10, "God hath revealed to us his Spirit, what none of the princes of this world knew." St. Thomas's answer to these critics is that the knowledge of God, given by grace, is in fact more perfect than that obtained by reason. Reason-based knowledge has two components, images of sensible objects, and what he calls the natural intelligible light, which enables abstract thinking, kind of like what Plato was talking about in his theory of forms. With both of these, the revelation of grace assists the attainment of knowledge. The natural light of our intellect grows stronger through infusions of gratuitous light. Some of the images in our mind have been formed by the divine, expressing divine concepts more clearly. This occurs with prophetic visions. Aquinas relates to us and says in some cases sensible things or even voices are formed by the divine to communicate with us. When Jesus was baptized, the Holy Ghost took on the appearance of a dove, and the voice of the Father said in Matthew 3:17, "This is my beloved Son." And this is a wandering author reminding you that we all have a part to play. And as always, my question remains the same. What are you doing to inspire, uplift, and empower your local community today? Because this world isn't changing unless we all do our part. And you can count on me to do mine daily. Until next time, God bless.